Player, it's time we had a chat about your first character sheet.
Yes, Storyteller Ross, I'm very excited for my Assamite Setite Initiate, Bally Apostate, of the third generation, who also has protein.
Dominion, you try saying it. All on an antediluvian who you just made up.
Well, of course. I found some obscure lore, and it's totally balanced. And not that that matters, you can totally trust me with it, so there's no need to worry at all. 100%. It's all good. Promise?
This is going to be more difficult than we thought.
Hi there guys, Ross, storyteller from Boston by Night here. Today I'm going to have a bit of a chat with you about character creation because it's one of the things that new players struggle with the most, and it's much easier to have that chat with all of you in a video than it is to have it one-on-one as we go through. So stay tuned and we'll have some tips for you and some common sense on how your storytellers think and what we can and cannot really include to give everybody a fair shot in Boston by Night. So before we talk about abilities and attributes, we need to talk about some generalities which go over all of them. If you've got 4 dots in an attribute or ability, that's a pretty major part of your backstory. That's like you're going to the US national champs for a thing. That could be firearms, it could be etiquette, it could be something else like that. It could be any one of the abilities or attributes. You want to have that written in. 5 dots in something is you don't just go to the Olympics for that thing, you might well win at it. It's a pretty big deal and you should hold it as such. Another thing to consider is just how many things you're really special at. We take it for granted that kindred or Canites or whatever you want to call them are special creatures. However, how special they are is always going to be on a little bit of a sliding scale. It's impossible for us to have a dozen Nobel Prize winners in every single room that we go into in the server. You've got to be bad at some things. I want you to, hopefully, a thing will pop up here, but I'm kind of new to this, so hopefully a thing will pop up here. Look at him. Look at him real good. We'll come back to him later on. You don't want to be this guy. If for no other reason, then it would be really boring. So typically, we allow around about 2 or 3 attributes and maybe 2 abilities to be at 4 dots or there around. We don't typically allow 5 dots in anything because it means that you've not got anywhere to grow, and that can be really boring. We want you to be able to develop and grow within the server, and that doesn't just mean your character arc, but it also means on your character sheet. We want you to feel more hench after you've been here for 3 months and picking up goals and completing them. Some things you might want to think about before you get to making your character, and some of these can be answered with some really good general questions about just which would be good to ask yourself. Can your character read to a reasonably good level? They've probably got a dot in academics then because they've probably gone to about a high school level of education. Do they know occult stuff about being a vampire, like staking or making ghouls? Blood bonds? Then they've probably got a dot in occult to show that knowledge. Have they managed to survive for a while with the politics of the damned? They've probably got a dot in politics then, if not 2, so that they can understand how things work in their sect and others. There are a couple of others, like if they're a gangrel or if there's some super outdoorsy concept, they probably have a few dots in survival. If they can drive, even if it's just their moped, they probably have a dot or 2 in drive, and that can be really useful when you go to escape. Investigation is one of the most useful knowledges in the game because it goes over so many different things which you want to try and find out, and so having that on your sheet, because remember knowledge is you need at least 1 dot to be able to roll for them at all. Having that on your sheet is super important. There are a couple of other soft ones which nobody's going to hold you to, but you should probably ask yourself, Empathy regards how they deal with emotions and other people and their motivations. So if they are relatively personable, they probably want a dot here and an expression. I lose track of the amount of characters that I see that have like 4 in charisma but nothing in expression, because people don't feel that they use it to make roles. But there is a social role system, so you should use it. Subterfuge is lying and spotting of lies. Vampires lie a fucking lot. You probably want to have a little bit of that so that you can get around in Boston and not be pinned down by something as unwieldy as the truth. Apparently, because I don't have any dots in computer, I forgot that it's a really important skill. If you want to use a computer or a mobile phone, all of that's covered by this knowledge. So if you want to use your phone for phone calls, texts, or sending tasteful or not so tasteful nudes, this is the skill which you're going to want at least a dot in. Disciplines are a tricky business, especially for elder kindred. We pretty much accept that kindred want to acquire more disciplines, and they manage it as they get older. You can trade favors or save people's lives, and maybe they'll pay you back with disciplines because they're pretty useful. The issue comes up when you have too many or you are all from out of clan, because then it doesn't fit with your archetype. We typically allow 1 or maybe 2 out of clan discipline at character creation, as long as it makes sense. If you have celerity, sure, you had a Toreador lover, but Kuldunic sorcery, when you're a Ventru, not so much. The Kulduns are pretty touchy about that sort of things. We've got a full list which will be coming out in the text document, which should be out in the next couple of days after this presentation. But there's that should give you the full details. We also need to talk about a couple of disciplines which, if used improperly, can be incredibly detrimental to the community at large. Dominate, Presence, and a couple of other effects can change the attitudes and actions of characters in a way which they wouldn't normally behave. Because of the intense ability for this to be detrimental to a character and to a player, we do not allow these to ever be used to achieve a sexual encounter with another character without their out of character consent. I realise that horrible things happen in the world of darkness. However, in order to keep this community safe and to keep our members comfortable with one another, we need you to make sure out of character that everybody's comfortable. Otherwise, this doesn't work. We very much encourage you to go and use all of these abilities for other functions and against NPCs. But we keep this one strictly reserved and make sure that everybody consents fully to it in an out of character sense. A key thing to think about as you're making your character is, how humane are they? Were they turned just the other night, and so they still think it's pretty horrible to kill humans? Or have they been out there taking names and putting folks down for the better part of a century? This will help to place you on the humanity scale. But if you want to take a step away from that, especially if you're Sabbat, then you should consider some of the other alternative morality systems called Puths of Enlightenment. These paths aren't as common as you might think, and if you want to incorporate them, it's going to create a radical change of morality to what we humans usually think of. It's a pretty big part of your backstory, so think about what a mentor taught you, why you're on that path as compared to other ones, what acts brought you to that path, and how you perhaps saved yourself onto it. Think about all of this, and then think about if you want to be out there killing humans, or if you want to be crying over their pitiful little souls. Another thing to consider alongside your path of morality is your virtues and your willpower. You may be on different virtues than conscience and self-control if you're on a different path of enlightenment. However, these are the typical ones which you might have started on. A thing which a lot of players make a mistake of, and which needs to be caught early, is having almost no conscience. This can create a death spiral where you do one bad thing, botch that conscience roll, and then you can't make any other conscience rolls because you've got no dots in it, or only one dot in it, and then suddenly you're spinning around the drain and very, very much a monster who is irrecoverable. Going into whitedom is a very real risk. Another element to talk about is willpower. A lot of kindred start out with 6 or 7 willpower. However, if you want more than that, think about why your character is more mentally strong. Not as in, I want it, therefore I need it. Think about it from a thematic point of view. What in their backstory justifies this? What makes them a strong candidate to be this mentally tough? If they've gone through some hardship, tell us. It'll make it much easier for us to understand why you feel your character is this way inclined or not. Being weakly willed can also be beneficial if you want to gain the trust of those around you and appear to be much less weak than you otherwise are. It's okay to be underestimated as long as you use it as a valuable strategy. So, all of these things are some expectations and some broad guidelines for when you submit your sheet. Remember how I told you about the count? Hopefully he's here now. We're okay with you being the count. In fact, we'd really like you to be the count. Even more than that, we want you to be the count with a guitar. However, there comes a certain point when we can only wiggle it so much and allow you so much specialness. We can allow you to be the count with a guitar, or even the count with fire coming out of his hands. We can't let you be the count with laser eyes, fire, and a guitar. So you need to take how your sheet is, not just in terms of the individual bits of it, or all of them being to the letter of the law, but also the work which has gone into it as a whole, which makes it work. We want you to join us and write with us, but we want you to put in as much effort as all the other people are here, so you can be part of this amazing community. So be the count with the guitar. Hey, hell, maybe even try and be the count with a guitar and fire coming out of his hands, but make it make sense and make it all link together well. How will the count have fire in his hands and use guitar strings? Gotta make it work. So that draws us to the end of our little video on character creation. It's a bit longer than I would have liked, but some of these things deserve a little bit more talking about. Hopefully that answers some of your questions and clears up some of the misconceptions which go around character creation. We've just concluded our circus event, which is absolutely amazing, and we were so glad to have so many of you there, and it was really great to do some new elements and some acts which we were able to call from the community in order to get going. And hopefully we'll see you in the next week, because the arc for the obelisk is just getting started, and hopefully we'll see it'll go absolutely wonderful. This has been Ross from Boston by Night. As always, keep your wits about you and keep an eye on the shadows. As always, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. We couldn't do this without all of your support, so thank you very much. If you're liking these poorly produced pornographic videos, please like, comment and subscribe, and maybe give us a visit on the Discord channel or on Patreon. Thanks again, guys. See you in the next one.